Alright guys, so welcome back to my channel. I have got an update video for you today on Violet. I'm going to be doing one of these for Dory as well. Because of the way I need to do this video, I'm going to do them as two separate videos. I think it would be too long otherwise, and I want to give you as much exposure as I can. We've had Dory and Violet to test with in our accounts for the last 4 days, and yeah, you know, in my last video with Dory, I said I wasn't going to wail on either Dory or Violet unless they were too good to pass up. Well, yeah, here we are. I can't pass up on Violet. She's just too good. Even without the tower traits, she's just too good. She's S tier. I'm just going to go out and say it. She's S tier. I don't care what anyone else says. You'll see in this video, so don't switch off now. Keep watching. Got lots of footage for you. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so here we are. We've got the lovely Violet in front of us. I'll start with the bio again very quickly, but she's got no towers, as we've said. There is speculation that there is going to be a Pixar tower coming, so maybe she will have a tower. However, for now she doesn't, but don't let this discourage you. She's still ridiculous. Let's move on to her abilities. Okay, so at the start of each combat, all enemies are inflicted with a minus 40% critical damage debuff for the remainder of the encounter or until Violet is defeated. I genuinely think this is awesome. This is a huge counter to range that rely on focus buffs, but also you notice it. You notice that they're unable to do as much damage in battle. Now, heavy attacks inflict shock, dealing 3% damage per second for 10 seconds. So this is another thing I definitely understated in my last video, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, you're gonna notice that characters are basically shocked the entire encounter. It's crazy. They're just literally perma-shocked. Because she uses her heavy attacks, and then if you've got one of her talents equipped, which we'll get to, they're always gonna basically be shocked. Now this is also very important because of what comes next. So basic attacks have a 10% chance to grant allies a 20% defense buff that lasts for 10 seconds, and you can max stack these for 3. Now if Violet's target is inflicted with shock, her basics have a 35% chance to grant a defense buff. Now why is this important? Violet's armor gain is huge. She basically gives 20% armor from both her signature ability and her special ability combined. Now if you increase the allies' defense through defense buffs, the armor is going to go through the roof. It's going to go up way higher than you think, and your characters are barely ever going to lose health. They're just going to have insane amount of armor throughout the whole battle. So the fact that she inflicts shock on her heavy attacks and with one of her talents equipped, it basically means she's going to be able to distribute these defense buffs easier and just keep the armor insanely stacked. So her core ability is genuinely ridiculously good. Moving on to her special ability, Violet grants a force field to all allies. The strength of a force field is equal to 50% of Violet's defense at the time of creation. Now if you have Violet's signature ability unlocked, that's going to be a minimum of 60% of Violet's defense at the time of creation. Now force fields absorb basic and heavy projectiles and will last for 10 seconds or until destroyed. So a couple of things here guys. Number one, this force field only protects from range. I read this the wrong way when I initially looked at it. I thought these force fields were going to protect from everything. Melees and tanks just punch straight through it. However, it means she is fantastic against ranged, just ridiculously good against range. Because of the strength of this force field, she naturally has quite high defense. She has the highest defense of any support. So when you're taking 60% up to 100% of Violet's defense as a force field, it's massive. It can be up to 5,400 health points. So these ranged attacks are never going to break through it. Now also when force fields are active, the ally is going to be protected against shock and burn. This is also just very good. It's very good against elementals. And then this very important bit at the bottom, for the first 5 seconds when a force field is active, it grants 2% armor per second to the ally. This is going to be increased to 4% if you've got the signature ability unlocked. Now 4% for 5 seconds is 20%, or 10% if you only have a 3-star. It's still massive, it's still awesome. Combine that with the defense buffs that she's giving out. She's giving out so much armor, ridiculous amount of armor, and it gives her great synergies with certain characters. For example, Mr. Incredible, she has an amazing synergy with her dad. He gives himself a ridiculous amount of defense buffs. She's going to give him so much armor. It's just insane. The synergy between these two is just phenomenal. But yeah, the force field animation is amazing. It looks so cool. Kabam did a fantastic job with this one. Now, if we move on to the signature ability, Violet grants a force field to allies at the start of each combat, and armor granted from force fields increased by an additional 2%. So that's what I mentioned just before. This is always going to be 2%. It doesn't scale with this ability. The bit below does. So the strength of Violet's force field is increased by an additional 50% of her defense. So as I said, that starts out at 10% and it increases to 50% if you have her max sig. Honestly, if you're going to get Violet, I genuinely recommend putting this signature ability up as high as possible. I haven't spent any signets yet. You can see I've got 20. Those are the 20 that I've bought throughout my time playing. I've never spent them, and I'm probably going to spend them here. So moving on to her talents. Steady Hands, now the basic talent. This is one you actually might want to equip. It is going to increase the armor gain that she gives herself. I'll put up the difference between her having this equipped and her not. But it's going to give her survivability. And not only that, it's going to increase the force field strength. So the force field that she's going to give to allies is going to be stronger as well. Okay? So armor gain just for herself, force field for herself and allies. Okay? This is one you might want to equip circumstantially. Moving on, we've got Blooming Strength. Ignore that, you don't need that. Then we've got Shrinking Violet. Now, personally, I won't use this myself. However, it is an awesome animation. It's so good. Once per encounter, while at or below 50% health, Violet gains a 20% defense buff that lasts for the rest of the encounter, so she's going to boost her survivability. She also gains an invisible buff for 15 seconds, greatly lowering enemy aggression towards her. Now, this actually doesn't just lower enemy aggression towards her, it basically stops enemies attacking her. She goes invisible, and then the AI can't see her. It's quite funny. You can still attack the AI as well, and they can't do anything about it. So for 15 seconds, you're basically completely invisible to the enemy, and you can do as much damage as you want to it. It looks really good. It's quite fun. And if you're in battles where you think Violet is going to be swarmed, perhaps, she's not the best at dealing with melees and tanks that really rush her, this might be one you want to equip. Generally speaking, it's not one that I will equip. I feel like I can hold the line whenever I'm using a melee or a tank. So for me, I probably won't equip this, but it's an awesome animation and definitely ability you can use in certain situations. Then moving on to Deflection Field. So Violet's critical damage debuff removes an additional minus 40% critical damage from enemies. This is just a massive counter to range, so you're taking effectively 80% of their critical damage away from you. It's also very good against melees that have high crit damage as well, someone like Mini, for example. It's kind of huge, yeah. It's a massive counter to range. It means that range can't really do much in the battle in general, and your force fields and armor gain are just going to completely protect against everything. It's a massive combination of a huge counter to them. This is a talent that I might equip, but it might be one that I toss up between, you know, this and Steady Hands, or Shrinking Violet if I am expecting just to be rushed and swarmed by enemies. Then we got Electrostatic Pulse. So when a force field is destroyed or expires, enemies are inflicted with a shock, dealing 5% damage per second for 10 seconds. Shocks inflicted by other allies deal an additional 10% damage. So I really underestimated this. This is ability I would suggest equipping, really, and just keeping equipped because of how it interacts with her defense buffs. You know, on those basics, going to increase that to 35% chance of giving defense buff to your allies. And then also, this ability basically means that enemies are permanently shocked, right? So because you start the battle with a force field, and then at the end of that force field, they're going to be inflicted with shock for 10 seconds. Her special ability is a 15-second cooldown. So there's only going to be 5 seconds in between where they're potentially not shocked, and she uses her heavy attacks quite a bit, so they're basically going to be shocked all the time. And then this last bit where shocks inflicted by other allies deal an additional 10% damage, so this works well with someone like Zerg. You know, Zerg inflicts a lot of shock just from his minigun. And yeah, I really rate this. Definitely underestimated it. And then lastly, incredible defenses. This is just another kind of must-have in my opinion. Because of the fact that force fields are kind of solely protection against ranged for the impact, having this talent equipped gives you some protection against melee and tanks. Because when a force field is applied to an ally, adjacent enemies are both knocked back. I'll circle back to that because that's a ridiculously good part of this elite talent. But basically, allies resist 30% basic and heavy attacks damage from tank and melee enemies when force fields are active. Her kit is pretty much designed to counter ranged, and then you've got this elite talent which says, wait, I'm not forgetting about tank and melees here. It basically makes force fields way more important than just simply as a ranged defensive mechanism. This is a must equip ability. Definitely once you unlock it at level 30, equip it and never take it off. Now the reason it is so important is because of this first part as well. So when a force field is applied to an ally, adjacent enemies are knocked back. So think about this, if you're running a battle with tank and melees, they're constantly going to be close-up battle next to enemies. So effectively, Violet's got a knockback with a special ability. This elite talent, a must-have, absolutely equip it. So there we have it, guys. I wanted to quickly show you some team combinations that I've used with her. Some really fun ones as well. Violet can pretty much work with anyone. I will say this, she really does need a good front line in front of her. So what I mean by that is she's going to struggle if you're just running a team of supports or a team of supports and ranged. She needs protection in front of her because she's a little bit weaker to melee and tank enemies. You know, she can get melted by someone like Minnie or Aladdin, even though she has this critical damage debuff that she can apply. So in most of my testing, I put her with another tank. Now, a couple of tanks that work really well with her. Wally, I mean, Wally works well with anyone, but the one that really shined for me was Mr. Incredible. Now, the one thing Mr. Incredible lacks is the fact that he doesn't give his teammates armor gain. And Violet makes up for that by giving him a sane amount of armor and the rest of the team, and making him probably the best tank in the game when he's paired with her. Now, I rate him, Simba, and Wally very highly. I think Wally is probably the best, but when you pair Violet and Mr. Incredible is just everything you want in a tank, okay? He's basically a high damage dealing tank. The only thing he lacks is a taunt, but that's a pairing I really enjoyed. Evil Queen. Now, this is a random pairing that I didn't expect to enjoy, but basically Violet is a support that can't heal herself, so sometimes it's useful to have another support with her. And the reason I liked Evil Queen is because of her poison. Basically, Evil Queen's going to be putting down her Heart's Bane debuffs. She's also going to be putting down poison. Violet's going to be permanently shocking, so we have this continuous damage element to these two combined. And then put someone like Mr. Incredible, you know, who can protect the front line. There's just so much healing, there's so much armor gain, there's so much continuous damage, and you've got a tank that is a phenomenal tank. So that's a random trio that I really enjoyed. As I said, with Violet's Electrostatic Pulse, she can work really well with Zerg because he's going to do more shock damage. And yeah, I also ran Violet with my standard setup like Wally and Ariel. She works really well with them. Between Violet and Wally, there's just so much armor gain for your team. You hardly have to worry about the fact that they don't heal. Probably the most fun of a combination I had was using Violet, Evil Queen, and Anna. You can effectively put down every single debuff in the game. It's quite funny. My phone struggled with some of the animations because there was just so much going on. There was wound, poison, freeze, shock, everything, even dizzy. It was definitely fun to test, but there wasn't that much DPS in that team, so I timed out a few matches. And then one of the best synergies as well that I haven't spoken about yet. Violet works really well with Mr. Incredible because she can make up for his shortfalls. She works insanely well with Simba because she can make up for his shortfalls. Now Simba, the biggest problem he has is the fact he gets melted by ranged. Violet, with her force field, with her critical damage debuffs, with everything that she does to counter against range, makes Simba basically indestructible. You've got Simba who can lure and go indestructible. If you time it right, where you put the force field on Simba just after he's come out of his lure, Simba can barely ever get hit. And that's the other thing, he's going to be also giving a ton of armor to your team. In my opinion, alongside Mr. Incredible, Simba is your go-to tank in this setup. Violet makes Simba ridiculous. The fact that she's got an elite talent which makes allies resist 30% basic and heavy attacks from tank and melee enemies whilst the force fields are active, it means Simba's basically going to get 60% resistance, you know, because he already has his own resistance to tank and melee enemies. So she's going to make him better at his job, and she's going to also make him durable and resistant against ranged enemies, which is his biggest shortcoming. I've got some footage here showing Simba in the last ranged moats mission. If you can remember back to my Simba video, he absolutely got melted in this mission. Violet makes it an absolute breeze. So my verdict on Violet, she's S tier, there's no doubt about it. I'm gonna wail on her. I'm gonna use the saved orbs that I have just to try and get her to at least Astral 2 or 3, hopefully. She's a lot of fun to play with as well. That's the other thing about her. Like, I really had fun with my testing of her. She's just a phenomenal support, and she does stuff that other supports can't do. The armor gain is ridiculous. The force fields are amazing. You know, her whole kit has interesting elements, and you know, she has weaknesses, as I've said. She's got those weaknesses to like melee enemies that rush her, but she can also go invisible, so you've got ways around it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave me a like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.